Donald Trump has been indicted 3 times, but that's not enough. He says, indict me again, why don't you? If these things are just meaningless pieces of paper, if every time we get a new indictment, we read through it and we say, well, this is interesting, because it feels like this is the exact same conduct that the Democratic Party's been doing for the last 5 decades. Why are you prosecuting Trump now? It feels like it's very partisan, very political. Classified documents, we've got that on both ends. People contesting elections, we've got that on both sides. It's the same story. And so it's like the boy who cried wolf. The Democrats have been screaming at us that Trump is this big insurrectionist going to take out America. And then they don't even charge him with seditious conspiracy. And they don't even request bond. It's embarrassing. They just let him waltz on out of there. But Trump is taking this in stride, laughing about it, as he should. He says, you know, I need one more indictment to ensure my election. Posted this on True Social. Absolutely love it. Because why not? Just keep them coming. Every time they indict him, it's like, idiots. Again, another one. And it's so obvious and transparent now that when this is happening in election season, it's because they have no campaign. This is their strategy. And so today we'll take a look at the summons, which was entered, executed, and returned. We've got clips from McCarthy and an analysis on why Donald Trump is unlikely to actually serve any time in prison. They just want to say he's been convicted. They want to put him on house arrest or do something like that. But prison for a president that has had Secret Service protection and is guaranteed by law, unless they do something like remove that, which I wouldn't put it past them. But let's check in at the docket and see what is happening on court. We've got this one filed on August 4th. We have another lawyer appears to be entering the game. Pro hoc vice. This just dropped, fresh out of the oven, Mike. This one says, Philza Pavilon Esquire, an attorney, in the case of Trump, now moves pro hoc vice to be counsel for Donald Trump, new lawyer. This motion is supported by her declaration and certificate of good standing. She's an active member of the bar in Illinois and Florida, multiple districts in Illinois and Florida. She's being sponsored by Trump's other lawyer, John Lauro. And then we'll take a look here. Says, I've never been disciplined. I have not been admitted within the last 2 years. I don't engage in the practice of law. Signed all of this off on 24th of July. We have another statement. She's in good standing. It's okay. So Trump has another lawyer who is submitting a notice of appearance, and we'll see. Certainly the judge will. Now, this is the minute order that came out officially on the court record. Says a status conference is now going to be scheduled August 28th, 10 a.m. We knew that. The court waives the requirement for Trump to appear, so he can phone in on this. And this is the one with Judge Chutkan. So she's not even requiring him to be back on that hearing. It is hereby ordered that Trump shall file any motion for excluding time from speedy trial, and the government shall file any opposition to that. So if Trump wants to include the time, remember when we talk about speedy trial and times in criminal law, the government has to bring the case within a certain period of time. We've got statute of limitations that say they have to file charges before a certain period of time. Once it is filed, then they've got to bring the trial under a certain period of time. They can't just delay indefinitely. And so when somebody's asking for a continuance or a postponement, it's like the clock starts against the other side. Almost like in a game of chess, you see people, even if you don't play, you've seen the movies where they click the clock and the clock starts counting against the other side, kind of like that. And so Trump is going to say, well, I don't think this time should count against us. Maybe he might make that argument, or maybe not. And the government has the opportunity to respond. And it's not the entire, it's only the time from the arraignment up until the next status conference, whether to include that in the calculation of speedy time or not. Judge says it is further ordered that by August 10th, the government shall file a brief proposing a trial date and providing an estimate of the time required for the government's case in chief during the trial. Government, tell me how much time you need to present your case to a jury, and when can we start? Then by August 17th, Trump has to respond, also proposing a trial date, and very similarly, how much time do you need at trial? Now, what we can probably expect is a very similar parallel to what we saw in Florida. Remember, very similar thing happened here. Jack Smith said, oh, we can get this trial done by December. Trump's people responded and said, no, December is far too long. How about we just don't set a trial date, which is also very abnormal. And then the judge returned and scheduled a trial date. So it'll probably be something like that. And the judge in the Florida case set a trial date in May. I still don't believe that's going to happen. Now that we have another co-defendant in that case, it's going to postpone that past the other election, I would imagine. And I'm going to guess the same thing happens here. But it doesn't mean that they're not going to ask for an earlier trial date. What a mess. We've got 4 different indictments and we're jumping all these different trial dates. It's just outstanding. So here, August 3rd, we had the actual arraignment. This was in front of Mokshila Upadhyay, and the plea of not guilty was entered and the informational summons was returned. So it sounds like the government already made an oral motion for a speedy trial back during the arraignment. So they want this thing to happen very quickly. Trump is going to respond and say the opposite of that. Now, this was just an oral motion. I'd like to have seen that motion, and maybe they'll supplement that. The government also says the judge ordered the government to produce all the exculpatory evidence pursuant to Brady, all the Brady materials. If you don't do it in a timely manner, there may be sanctions, including the exclusion of evidence, adverse jury instructions, and dismissal of charges. Now, this is going to be a lot of fun. I mean, all the exculpatory evidence, in my opinion, is from every single agency, every single state, because he was the president. He was kind of any interface at every level that talked about 2020 or January 6th, anything is exculpatory. exculpatory. Now, they did issue the summons and they returned it. Point is, they're not going to comply with it. All right, they're going to cut it off. They're going to say, Trump, you don't have an indefinite request. You just can't keep fishing, is what they're going to say. This is a fishing expedition, and he wants stuff from all of these agencies. It's not relevant. Just like they did with the Proud Boys, just like they did with the Oath Keepers. So the summons has been returned, and let's pull this one up. This is the filing that was originally sent to Trump, summonsing him to court so that he would appear. And it is one page, not a long document. We see it scanned into the record. U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia, United States of America, against Donald Trump. Assigned to Judge Tanya Sue Chutkin. Indictment. Says, hey, Trump, you've been summoned to appear before a district court. Filed with it based on the following document, filed with the in court, the indictment, the one that we read through. Please appear, D.C. District Court, room 22A, 4 p.m. August 3rd. We know that the offense is briefly described as follows. We've got the 4 charges: conspiracy to defraud the United States, conspiracy to obstruct an official proceeding, obstruction or attempt to obstruct an official proceeding. So it's the thought to obstruct and the plan to obstruct, and then the actual obstruction, along with conspiracy against rights. We see Judge Makshila Upadhyay is going to be assigned the case. Oh, no, that is the magistrate judge. She did the arraignment. The case is going to go to Judge Chutkin. And then on 8/1, all executed. Signed off here. Executed and returned. I declare under penalty of perjury. Signed off on by the U.S. Marshal and the process server. All entered now onto the court record. So not a lot there, but certainly interesting to see. So in reaction to this, we've got people like Joy Reid who are very excited, saying, oh, now Trump finally going to get it. Now he's finally in front of a judge who's not a white guy. Wait till this comes down.
They oppose that venue for many reasons. The demographics of it are interesting. This judge name, I believe this magistrate judge is Makshila Upadhyay, or Upadhyay. I might be pronouncing it wrong.
Yeah, I think you botched that
color. The judge he will be facing in the trial, Jamaican-born woman of color. He seems to be facing sort of demographic reality, legal reality, and, situational reality.
He's in D.C. now. It's like 92% Democrats. And, man, they've been waiting for this day for a long time. Even Nancy Pelosi says, I've been waiting for this day.
A woman of color.
I think it's Upadhyay. Now, let's go through. We have it on the record. I think it's Mokshila Upadhyay. Now, let's go through it. Let's hear.
Judge Mokshila Upadhyay.
Upadhyay. Yeah. One more time.
Judge Mokshila Upadhyay.
Upadhyay. Yeah. So, yeah, she botched it pretty bigly there. All right. Well, we'll see. Now, they're excited about it. 92% Democrats. Judges flipping out about the January 6th so-called riot. And then reporters were telling us the judges were piling in, packing into the courtroom because they all wanted to glance at Trump. But Kev over in the House of Representatives says, this is very interesting. Maybe there's a reason why we didn't get a more substantive indictment. Maybe the reason we don't have seditious conspiracy or any other charges is because they'll come and bring those back later in a superseding indictment. And maybe they rush this indictment, 1, to beat Fani Willis, the biggest Fani attorney general in Georgia, and 2, because they needed to change the narrative because Joe Biden is getting some very bad news from Devin Archer. Here's Kev.
Why didn't Garland? He seemed like he was going to do nothing about this for the first 2 years. It seems as though every time Trump goes higher in the poll, he gets a new indictment. It seems to me, after you learn of the real dealings behind the Bidens, the next day he gets indicted.
Yeah, strange.
Anytime there is new information, the federal government just seems to have a 2-tier system.
Yeah, you're right about that, Kev. So maybe you should just keep talking about it and something will happen magically. So we have another report. A lot of people asking, what are they going to do about this? Are they going to put him in prison? Are they going to lock him up? I think that they would like to do that. I think that these people, they are so deluded that if they don't get this done, there's going to be a big contingent of their people that are very upset about it. So we've got this article says that if convicted of any of the 3 criminal cases he's now facing, Trump may be able to influence whether he goes to prison and what his stay there looks like. Why? Secret Service. Presidents since 1965 have been afforded lifetime protection. Then only Nixon has agreed to waive it. But unless he follows Nixon's example, which Trump could force politically and logistically complex questions over whether officials should detail agents to protect a former American president behind bars, whether they should leave it to prison authorities to keep him safe or some type of home confinement. Now, I think these people, like the people who are writing this article and going through this game, I think they're kind of like role-playing in their minds or something, that, that it would ever get this far, saying, could Trump face prison? Theoretically, yes. Practically, no. Right, that's the answer. Judge, this came over from Chuck Rosenberg, a former top federal prosecutor and counsel to then FBI Director Comey. Rosenberg served briefly head of DEA in the Trump administration. He said the president had condoned police misconduct when saying they should smash their heads when they're loading them into the vehicles. Now, Trump is facing, but here's what he says. He says, any federal district judge ought to understand it raises enormous and unprecedented logistical issues if he's incarcerated, right? Probation, fines, community service, home confinement are all the alternatives. But he's facing 3 separate criminal cases. They technically come with the possibility of decades in prison. Manny McCord, another one who acted as assistant attorney general for Obama, said Trump, and this presents unique challenges, no kidding, sitting. Ensuring some penalty for a former president under Secret Service detail would require extensive discussions and potential accommodations. Said because it would be a pretty enormous burden on our prison system to have to incarcerate Donald Trump. The question is an open one at the Secret Service. Asked whether a former president who does not waive protection can be incarcerated, the agency said the Secret Service does not have a comment or response, only because there is no such policy or procedure that currently exists. You're kidding. We won't have any further comment, they added on this. So how do you imprison him? There is no precedent for this. They need 24/7 protection. It's just like a joke. Reminds me of like a, it's a little bit too self-indulgent. We're not going to continue to read it. So, but you get the point, right? There are serious logistical issues on this. It's why we don't do this stuff. And now we're asking what we already believe to be a corrupt partisan government to lawfully imprison the leader of half the country. Are you out of your minds, idiots? So Trump now is speaking about this, and he, as per usual, really colors this up a bit for us. He tells us how disgusting DC has become in his absence.
Well, thank you very much. This is a very sad day for America, and it was also very sad driving through Washington, D.C. and seeing the filth and the decay and all of the broken buildings and walls and the graffiti. This is not the place that I left. It's a very sad thing to see it. When you look at what's happening, this is a persecution of a political opponent.
And he's right about that. So short clip from Trump, and the takeaway on a lot of this from Jim Jordan is that this is making Trump stronger.
I do think the end result, the takeaway is, I think this strengthens, just hardens the support for President Trump and frankly expands it. I think Dana was mentioned earlier in the show that, you look at the poll numbers earlier in the week, I think it's 54-17 in the Republican primary, but more importantly, he's dead even with Joe Biden in the New York Times poll. So my gut tells that's what the New York Times is saying. It's probably better President Trump in that in another poll. And this, I think, only again hardens his support, expands his support because the country gets it. And I think the reason that's happening is so much of the country is sick of this nonstop attack, this ridiculous attack on President Trump for 7 years now. And they're tired of this elite attitude in D.C. that says, oh, we're better than everyone else. There's a different set of rules. And I think people in flyover country, hillbillies in Ohio or Iowa or Oklahoma, they're so sick of it. We're so sick of it. We're saying we're going to support President Trump. I think that's the takeaway. I think that's the result of all this.
Trump becomes the symbol of a broken, corrupt government because you can see what the government is doing. They just keep punching and slicing against one man, Donald Trump, and he just keeps fighting forward, and they have tried many times to sideline him. Gonna happen. Trump says, go ahead, indict me again. What do I care?